Ancient Celtic games. Now, I'm a bit of a paradox. I'm a very large man who looks as if he would play American football, or at least be a fan of it, but I'm not. I kind of loathe the sport. I have always enjoyed individual sports and competitions. I feel they test a competitor better than a team sport. So it surprised me none, when I took up the Highland Games, and it didn't surprise me any either when I learned that the Celtic world had its own type of Super Bowl. Well, it's kind of a stretch. It's more like its own Olympics, and it was really more than that. They were called the Tailteann Games, and they were held in Ireland almost every year, dating from the earliest mention of them from around 1829 BC, making them older than the ancient Greek Olympic Games. Now, the Tailteann Games were known as the Tailteann Fair, the Inuk Tailteann, the Unuk Tailteann, the Assembly of Tailtea, the Fair of Tailteann, and so on. They had all kinds of different names. But in the Lebar Gabála, which is the Irish Book of Invasions, the people from the 6 different invasions, like the Caesarians, the people from about the time of Noah's flood, 2300 BC, and the Partholonians, who fled from Greece around 2000 BC, and the Numidians from the Middle East around 1730 BC, and then even the Milesians, which was about 1000 BC, who came out of Scythia and Egypt before they settled in Spain. They all came to Ireland and would not have even known about the ancient Olympic Games in Greece, which dated from 776 BC. Now, some of these ancient people had to have knowledge of games like this, like the ancient Greek Olympic Games, for games to be so remarkably similar to make it to Ireland 1,000 years before the first recorded ancient Greek games. If the similar games had been happening during their time when they lived in their ancestral countries before coming to Ireland, they could have brought the idea of them with them. Now, this could be how such ancient games like the Tailteann Games came to Ireland, and it could also be how the games were happening in Ireland before the first recorded games in Greece. After all, we just assume that these were the first games of this type in the world, and we are not sure that the date of the games is even correct. So there's a theory out there about this, and it's that the Olympic Games happened on a much smaller scale in regions and nations around Greece, and was later compiled into a larger and more notable event after the Greek conquest of most of the area around the Mediterranean, which made them a controlling power in the region. Now, the Tailteann Games are believed to have taken place in County Meath, which was traditionally where the High King of Ireland was based. Now, these games are thought to date back to around 1829 BC, like I said, and the Tailteann Games are said to have gotten their name from Tailteann, which is, she's also known as Tailteann and Tailtea. It's a figure from Irish mythology. Now, according to legend, Tailteann was married to Ecich Mac Airc, a Fir-Bolg High King of Ireland. Tailteann became a foster mother to Lu, one of the most well-known gods in Irish mythology. Now, Tailteann is reported to have died of exhaustion after working hard to prepare the land for agriculture. And the ancient Irish games, or Tailteann Games, were supposedly established by Lu to honor Tailteann. The games that are named after the goddess Tailteann, whose themes are the first harvest and excelling in a craft or sport, were around for 1,000 years or more to honor her. And Tailteann, she had lived and died in the time around 2000 BC. Now, the games lasted until around the time that the Normans invaded Ireland in 1169 AD. And there were some attempts to revive the ancient Irish games in the 19th and 20th centuries, but it didn't take because of all the political unrest. There was so much going on in Ireland at the time, it just wasn't going to happen. But members of the GAA, the Gaelic Athletic Association, tried to revive it and tried to revive the Tailteann Games in the 1800s, but it never happened. And there were more attempts to revive the games in the 1920s during the Irish Free State time, with events in 1924, 1928, and 1932. However, after the 1932 election, there was basically no more public funding for the revival of the Tailteann Games, and so there were no more after that. Most of the events and opening ceremonies were held at Croke Park in Dublin, and the games were open to people born in Ireland or with Irish ancestry, and happened not long after the Summer Olympics of those years. Competitors came from England, Scotland, Wales, Canada, the US, South Africa, and Australia. The sporting events that were included in the ancient Irish Tailteann Games lasted for around 30 days and involved many sports. The long jump, the high jump, running, hurling, spear throwing, boxing, sword fighting, archery, wrestling, swimming, chariot racing, and horse racing. Many people have always believed that even in the ancient Olympic Games, there was more to it than just a simple sporting event. And part of that is because the Tailteann Games were also competitions in the arts such as strategy and singing, dancing, storytelling, poetry, something called Fichel, which is an ancient board game, and also competitions by craftspeople such as jewelers, goldsmiths, weavers, and armorers. And probably the most dangerous sporting event ever devised by man or God, marriages. Marriages were arranged during the Tailteann Games, and newly married couples had a year and a day to decide whether they wanted to stay together or not. So if they decided not to stay together at the next year's games, they would simply walk away from each other on the separation hills and look for love elsewhere. Separation hill is you walk up the top of the hill and you walk opposite directions, and when you don't see each other anymore, well, then you're out of each other's lives. Dang. So really, who cares about the Super Bowl? Let's bring back the Tailteann Games. I agree with that.